Dan Abrams, you know him, was at NBC. He's still at ABC as a legal correspondent. He runs a website called Mediaite, where they write about media every day. He was on News Nation until recently. The guy knows the media. So, number one question, is the media, the linear media, corporate media, losing power in America?
Absolutely. That's an easy one. The mainstream media, the media that you and I grew up on, has definitely lost influence. It's lost viewers. It's lost its power. It doesn't mean it's powerless. It's still influential, but just doesn't have anything like the sort of influence that it once had. And I think, by the way, I think that applies to the Associated Press as well. I mean, AP used to, you know this. AP used to be the thing, right? AP sends something out, it goes to everyone, everywhere, all over the world. Well, now everything goes to everyone all over the world.
That's right. Now, why are they losing power so rapidly? I know there's more competition with the social media, but I believe it has to do with partisanship. That people, and all the surveys show this, they don't trust the media anymore. It's in business to preach to the choir, tell people what they want to hear. I think that's the main reason for the decline.
I think it's a combination. I think it is definitely the medium. It is the fact that people can get information elsewhere. They don't have to turn on NBC.
But why wouldn't you turn it on if you liked it?
Yeah, you might.
Yeah,
but you
if
might.
You liked it,
right?
Come on.
But you might prefer to hear more of what you want to hear on a daily basis. And I will say that the major loss for the mainstream media has been among conservatives. There is no doubt about that.
Well, wait a minute. There's two networks that are 100% conservative, Fox and Newsmax.
Yes, correct. And I think that the ABCs and CBSs, and put aside cable for a moment, right? The broadcast networks, the places that everyone used to get their news from, the folks who are on the right will now very often go to someone like Bret Baier on Fox News to get that quote unquote newscast. Or they'll go to folks like you, by the way, who are on their own, independent, not beholden to a bigger entity. And they'll say, you know what? I like O'Reilly. What does he have to say about this? I think people now have a lot more choices than they ever had before. And I think that has made a huge difference in, these guys used to be the gatekeepers. It was all about, if you weren't, you couldn't get someone to cover it, then the story faded. Now there's a whole host of opportunities and options to get someone to get a story, your take, whatever it is out there.
I think Trump destroyed the media. And he did it passively, not actively. Obviously, this AP thing was active. He doesn't like them. He doesn't like NBC, in particular, those two. But by hating Trump as much as MSNBC, NBC News, CNN, by hating him, viscerally hating him, to this day, to this moment, fair-minded Americans, not ideologues, makes us uneasy. Am I wrong?
I think you're right. Look, I think there is, people use the term Trump derangement syndrome, right? And, either people on the right use it and say it with a sort of a smile and a snicker, and people on the left say, there's no such thing. But the truth is there is such thing. There really is this sense on the part of some. They are so angry at Trump all the time that they just can't do what they're supposed to do in a remotely objective way. Now, I will say this in defense of some of the folks on the left, is that Donald Trump has gone into this Trump 2, his second effort here, and has definitely taken more extreme measures and positions than he did in Trump 1. And as a result, if you are someone who is there's no such thing as objectivity, pure objectivity. Let's call it, so you're somewhere right of center, left of center, right? And the guy who's in power is taking positions that are pretty extreme in a lot of ways. You're gonna be calling him out. And as a result, you're going to hear more criticism of Trump than you might of another Republican in that role.
All
And the
right,
same way, by
but
the way, if you had AOC or Elon Omar, and I'm not saying that they're apples to
no, it wouldn't be
apples
at the
there.
same level, though. It wouldn't be at the
It
same
would.
level.
I think that's fair. I think you're right. It wouldn't be at
The
the same level.
corporate media tried to re-elect the Biden administration through Kamala Harris. They tried everything. That 60 Minutes thing is a legitimate thing. They tried to help her.
Oh,
And
come on. You think that 60 Minutes thing
I'm
was
sorry,
really
I
a big
saw
deal?
that
Come
transcript.
on,
I
Bill.
saw how they edited it, and they did not have to edit it that way. They
Well,
tried
how do
to
we know
make
that
her
they
look.
edited it? We know they edited it because they
Well,
put
they
it out
admit it.
themselves.
They admit they
They
edited
put it
it.
out in two different forms. They
They
put
had
out
to.
one, they put out the other. They didn't have to.
Oh,
They
yeah,
put out
they
one
did.
as a tease on Face the Nation. They put out the other on 60 Minutes. They were doing it because they just thought, oh, these are
How,
two, different
Dan,
ways of getting the same thing.
how long did it take for 60 Minutes to put that transcript out?
That was the mistake. The mistake was not
Thank
releasing
you.
it. But now that we've seen it, it wasn't that big a deal.
I've edited.
It's typical editing.
You and I have edited thousands of pieces. I never would have edited my piece that way. In a million years, I wouldn't have.
I didn't find that editing to be that disturbing.
All right.
I didn't find it to be disturbing at all. But
I think they absolutely, and then subsequently every week on 60 Minutes, they just bash Trump. Just bash him.
well,
every week.
that's true.
So over the past few weeks, the Washington Post, the New Yorker magazine, the New York Times Athletic, the New York Post, Fox News, News Nation have all done features on you about your political future in their estimation. It's not like you've said anything exactly like that. Why do you think that is? Why are you getting so much attention in this area?
Because I do something that the Democratic Party doesn't do at this particular moment in time. I resonate. It's really that simple. And I'm not saying that to brag on myself. I'm saying that to highlight the desolate state of affairs that exists within the Democratic Party. They haven't been very, very impressive, collectively speaking, of course. And I think that when you see the election and what the election results revealed, Donald Trump gets 77 million votes. He wins the popular vote. He wins the Electoral College vote. He wins every swing state. He's up in like 50 counties. He gave her a run for her money in New York. They improved in California. And obviously they won the Senate, they won the House, and they maintained, their stake in the House. In the Senate. They won the Senate and they maintained their stake in the House as well. You take all of those things into account, and there's just no question that the Democratic Party is in dire straits right now. And so when you hear me pointing out some of the things that I pointed out, I'm not one of those guys, Bill, who believes that because you think differently than me, you're a racist. You're anti-black.
No,
you're
you don't play that. I've never heard you play that card.
I don't play that game.
Why do you think Carville gets so upset about this? What is it that you're doing that annoys him?
Well, you know this better than me because you're the veteran in politics over the last 50, 60 plus years, 50 years plus. I'm not going to go the 60 route because you're not that old. But here's the deal. In the end, when you look at a guy like James Carville, who came across as a bit truculent to say the least, I think that, first of all, he misquoted me. I did not say there was no talent in the Democratic Party. I said there was no one who was resonating. They did not have a voice. I happen to know Wes Moore, the governor of Maryland. He's a friend of mine. I mean, I like him a great, great deal. We've become friends. I enjoyed my interview with Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. I just finished interviewing a few minutes ago minority leader of the House, Mr. Hakeem Jeffries. So it's not like the Democratic Party is devoid of talent. That's not what I said. But they are devoid of a voice. They are devoid of somebody who resonates on a national level. And I think James Carville took exception to that primarily because he forgot that he was the one saying it too, which is why on my show, when I clapped back at him, I played some clips of him saying the same damn thing that I said because he had been lamenting that. And I think that when
you ought to get Carville on your podcast, which is very successful.
I'm going on his.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
because
on his. No problem.
There's a couple of things in play. Number one, there is no leader of the Democratic Party. That would be my first question, Carville. Who's the leader? Chuck Schumer? Come on.
Exactly.
There's no leader. They don't have anybody.
Totally true.
Kamala resurfaced at the NAACP, didn't really make a dent, so that it's wide open. Number two, Trump opened the gates for populist candidates. And if you ever decided to get into politics, that's what you would be, a populist candidate. You would be going right to the people and say, look, I feel for you, and I'm going to, if you elect me, I'm going to try to solve some of your problems. That's what Trump did. And it's been very successful for Trump. But right now, the Democratic Party is disarray, and Carville knows that, but it just seems to be he was insulted.
And not listening to him. That's where his real frustration comes from. And I'm not, and please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they shouldn't listen to him. I think they should have listened to him. But I think that, as is the case in our society today, on a plethora of platforms and in industries where you've got youngsters on the come up, and they sort of ease the elder statesmen out of the mix because they want to run things themselves. I deal with that in sports too, where you have an abundance of individuals who were qualified and they couldn't get a job because the youngsters were placed at the helm and they didn't want to bring somebody in more knowledgeable than them. Take into account, you know your sports a little bit, Bill O'Reilly. Bill Belichick couldn't get an NFL job. The man has won 8 Super Bowl championships, 2 as a defensive coordinator, 6 as a head coach. And when he got let go by the New England Patriots, he couldn't get a job. He had to go back to college at the University of North Carolina to get a head coach
job. They didn't want to give a guy like that control.
I know that. But what I'm saying is transitioning back to politics, you have people in positions of power within the Democratic establishment that clearly didn't want to listen to James Carville. So that could be a part of his frustration. But in the end, he came at the wrong person, because I wasn't knocking him. I thought they should have listened to him. But when he clapped back at me, I'm like, wait a minute, you've been talking the same stuff that I've been saying. You must have forgot about that. Let me remind you. And that's about as far as I
If you really want to cut through it all, and no Democrat has the courage to say this, Joe Biden destroyed the party. He destroyed it.
Yes, I said that.
But you're not, you're not in the political arena. There's nobody in Congress or working in the Democratic precincts, no governor, nobody. Wes Moore, your buddy, when you talk to him and you ask him, did Joe Biden destroy the Democratic Party? He'll say no, or he won't answer the question. Joe Biden destroyed it because he's the second worst president in our history. And it's not even close. I mean, you can never beat James Buchanan because he let the Civil War happen. But Biden, if you read my message of the day on BillO'Reilly.com, the guy, that's why Trump is bouncing up and down like, a 18-year-old on speed, because he's trying to reverse all of this stuff that's hurting every American. But the Democrats won't acknowledge that. And they also won't acknowledge that woke culture has destroyed the fabric of the party. That's what the main thing is all about, right?
You and I have been, you're absolutely right. You and I have been on TV together, and you know how I love to disagree with you, but when you're right, you're right. Damn it, I got to concede it. And you're right on the money with that, And so when you take into account, first of all, Joe Biden was supposed to leave. He was supposed to be a transitional president, and then was feeling himself when the midterms wasn't a red wave in 2022, so he decides to stay in office, basically betrays the party, and then they got to come up with some elaborate scheme to get him up out of there. That's what I firmly believe. And it turned out to backfire on them. And when you look at the actions of Trump right now, and people talk about him trying to undo so much that they have done, whether you like or dislike what Trump is doing, and there's plenty of people in the center and clearly on the left who do dislike what he is doing, it is no doubt he is trying to do exactly what he said he was going to do, which is also the antithesis of what Democrats, at least in recent memory, are known about.
He's going
so
further.
That's the bottom line. He is going further, going a bit too far.
Nobody expected him to prop up Putin. But as I wrote in my column, this is why he's propping up Putin. So, number one, you would agree with me that Donald Trump's taking revenge on the American media, correct?
Yeah, no question. But I also think that it's been entirely predictable, given the way that the mainstream media in America has behaved in such an overtly partisan manner against him for 8 years. And I've been criticizing them for 8 years for doing it, pointing out that it's not the job of the media to take sides. I mean, some of them may be unashamedly, partisan. Fine, then show your colors. It's the more insidious, secret partisan behavior of very liberal-dominated newsrooms working at the supposedly impartial networks who've waged a kind of systematic activist campaign against Trump. And obviously, now he's got the chance, he's going to have some fun with them. But I would tell them to look at themselves very hard in the mirror and say, have we really not brought this on ourselves?
I work for CBS News. I work for ABC News. I mean, I know what the deal is. Now, it's crazy since Trump got into politics. Then all of the barriers left. And it was justified by a New York Times columnist who said, look, this guy's a danger to the union, so we're not going to have any rules anymore. We're going to try to destroy him. And once the New York Times put that posture out, then they all followed, and they thought that they had him. They thought that Donald Trump was done, and he rose like Dracula, and now he's going after them. Do you feel that is beneath the President of the United States to wreak that kind of vengeance?
Well, I think Donald Trump is always going to do what Donald Trump wants to do. And people who've tried to get involved in changing his mind about exacting retribution in this kind of manner normally discover it's a bit pointless. You know, he's nearly 80 years old. He's a leopard who won't change his spots when it comes to that kind of thing. If you read his book, The Art of the Deal, then it's all in there. Somebody punches you, punch them 10 times harder back is his mantra, and always has been for 50 years. So he's not going to change now. Look, I do think it's probably a little bit of a waste of time for the President of the United States, but he's got so many more important things to worry about than going after the media. But what he's really doing, Bill, I think, is he's putting them back in their box. And he's also, I think, trying to focus their minds on, why don't you just try in this term of office, unlike the first term, being a little bit more fair-minded, you know, having some more conservative voices on your network, actually not making them pariahs, not directing your audience to feel that everything that Donald Trump does is evil personified. And actually, a lot of it might be quite good.
Now, when I was in London for the New York Jet-Minnesota Viking game in October, I pay close attention to the media in Great Britain, and a lot of them want to interview me. I just did a big thing in Paris. I am stunned by the lack of knowledge that British journalists have about our system in America. They don't understand how it works. They don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, I've had the pleasure and honor of working and living in America for 20 years now. So I have a much greater knowledge, I would say, than 98% of British journalists. And they've been very lazy, particularly, I think, in their treatment of Trump. Just taking a kind of very easy, simplistic narrative that everything he does is awful. And that, of course, the Democrats are better people and a better party. And, of course, they're going to keep winning. And that just hasn't been borne out by events. So
but the British people buy it.
A bit meek and mild now.
The British people buy it. I mean, you got the BBC lined up to do exactly what the NBC News is doing here. The BBC does over there, right?
Yeah, but I would say that the difference now compared to 2016, for example, or indeed Trump's whole first term, was that I would say the vast majority of people in Britain had a pretty negative view of Trump in his first term, driven largely by the media from America and everyone taking their lead from that. Right across Britain, from north to south, east to west, there is a massively better, more positive feeling towards Trump from the public, from the people.
Why?
Not necessarily the media. Well, because I think they've looked at it. I'll tell you why. Because we have a left-wing socialist government now in this country. Everybody was sick and tired of the Conservatives. They were no good, the Conservative governments, for 15 years. Honestly, a rat bag of very poor, incompetent leaders in the main. And inevitably, they got eventually kicked out of office. But what happened next was not like in 97, when Tony Blair came in and did a lot of pretty good things, actually, and was very, very popular. What happened here was that clearly, very quickly became clear to people that the Labour Party had not had any great plan for improving the country. Their whole stance was going to be the Conservative Party were terrible. They've driven the country into the ground. We're in terrible shape. And by the way, things are going to get worse. And their first actions were to punish financially pensioners and then to punish financially the farmers.
So
and
the
public
lefties
went, hang on, this is ridiculous.
Right. So the lefties are not succeeding in Great Britain. So by transferal, Trump looks a little bit better across the pond. Would I have it?
Yeah.
All right.
That's it. And they look at him being very decisive and hitting the ground very hard and running with all these executive orders. And they're like, we'd love a bit of that energy and dynamism over here, please.
All right, little action, right, in the House
Yeah.
of Commons. Let's get some action going on.
To watch the full episodes of the No Spin News, visit BillO'Reilly.com and sign up to become a premium or concierge member. That's BillO'Reilly.com. Sign up and start watching today.